Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. My topics for tonight are Trump's executive order on censorship, two moves in the AI area, and Larry Wilkerson on some of the early moves that Trump has made. So, let us get into the first of our topics. Trump's executive order on censorship. And we have a very interesting piece from the Consortium News and some other interesting pieces too. But first is from Consortium News, and it's from Joe Lauria. It's the editor over there. Headline is Trump issues order to end censorship. On Monday, Donald Trump signed an executive order that ensures no federal government official facilitates conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen, reports Joe Lauria. This was special to the Consortium News. Well, Joe Lauria is the editor, so. President Donald Trump, in his inaugural speech on Monday, vowed to end online censorship by government using social media companies as proxies, he said. After years and years of unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. Will not allow that to happen and will not happen again, unquote. Later on Monday, Trump signed the executive order, quote, restoring free speech and ending federal censorship, which reads, quote, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, an amendment essential to the success of our republic, enshrines the right of the American people to speak freely in the public square without government interference. Over the last 4 years, the previous administration trampled free speech rights by censoring American speech on online platforms, often by exerting substantial coercive pressure on third parties, such as social media companies, to moderate, deplatform, or otherwise suppress speech that the federal government did not approve. Under the guise of combating misinformation, quote unquote, disinformation, quote unquote, and malinformation, quote unquote, the federal government infringed on the constitutionally protected speech rights of American citizens across the United States in a manner that advanced the government's preferred narrative about significant matters of public debate. Government censorship of speech is intolerable in a free society, unquote. The executive order sets out to A, secure the right of the American people to engage in constitutionally protected speech, B, ensure that no federal government officer, employee, or agent engages in or facilitates any conduct that would constitutionally abridge the free speech of any citizen. D, ensure that no taxpayer resources are used to engage in or facilitate any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen. And D, identify and take appropriate action to correct past misconduct by the federal government related to censorship of protected speech. Significantly, the executive order says the quote, Attorney General, in consultation with the heads of executive departments and agencies, shall investigate the activities of the federal government over the last 4 years that are inconsistent with the purposes and policies of this order. Okay, so that seems straightforward enough. There are a few things we can initially say about it, like Donald Trump has recently been threatening journalists with prosecution and also threatening to revenge himself on his enemies. Okay, you wonder how he can do that without violating his own executive order. So there's always that. But before we go any further with this article and with this issue, I am going to I'm going to share this on Facebook. So there it is. Hopefully that does it. So going on with the article. Background to the order. According to the Twitter files, the Biden administration ramped up federal agencies such as Homeland Security and the FBI to pressure social media companies like Twitter to remove tweets or suspend user accounts because the federal government determined they had posted quote unquote, or quote unquote, disinformation. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled more than once, most recently in National Rifle Association of America versus Bello in 2024, that it is illegal for the government to use a private actor as a proxy to suppress free speech. The Biden administration acted mostly against conservatives online, but left-wing critics of the Democrats were also targeted. Biden tried direct government censorship with his Disinformation Governance Board in the Department of Homeland Security, but it collapsed after public and Republican outrage over its clear unconstitutionality. Social media companies were often uncomfortable with the intense pressure they were under from the government to censor their users. For instance, files reported on by Matt Taibbi show Twitter executives internally debating how they could ignore government pressure. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg told Joe Rogan in August 2022 that the FBI warned him about Hunter Biden's laptop just weeks before the 2020 election, and based on that, Facebook made it difficult to share the story. Quote, when we take down something that we're not supposed to, that's the worst, unquote, Zuckerberg said to Rogan. More than 50 U.S. intelligence officers falsely issued a statement saying the laptop story was, quote, Russian propaganda, unquote. Based on that, Twitter not only blocked posts about it, but suspended the New York Post account as it was the post that broke the story. The mainstream media later admitted the laptop story was real. The laptop gave evidence of Joe Biden's involvement in Hunter's shady business deals and was not Russian disinformation. Tampering with the story's reach was a clear case of, quote, election interference by pro-democratic forces, as opposed to their own phony allegations of Russian electoral interference in 2016 and 2020. Just before Trump's inauguration, Zuckerberg announced that he would be ending third-party fact-checking on Facebook. Zuckerberg admitted this month that, quote, we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content, but the problem with complex systems is that they make mistakes. Quote, even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts. That's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship, unquote, Zuckerberg said. Fact-checking and the disinformation cottage industry sprung up in the wake of Trump's initially shocking 2016 victory. It sought to discredit criticism of the fake Russian-Gate scandal that ensnared Trump in a conspiracy theory which claimed Trump won because he was a Kremlin agent. These fact-checkers and overnight disinformation experts, quote-unquote, helped this story become fanatically embraced by Democratic media and millions of Americans. They moved on to focus on other so-called, quote, disinformation, unquote, mostly connected to Russia. These so-called experts extended their dragnet to independent media and social media users who questioned Russiagate and other mainstream narratives. Independent media outlets, including Consortium News, were essentially accused of spreading Russian propaganda because of its legitimate criticism of U.S.-Russia policy, especially Washington's provocation of Moscow in Ukraine. A Louisiana judge on July 4th, 2023, banned a number of Biden administration officials from communicating with social media companies because of the Twitter files revelations. The case of Missouri versus Biden was eventually dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court in June 2024, which ruled that the states of Missouri and Louisiana did not have standing to bring the action against the federal government. Trump's executive order would appear to overcome that ruling. Joe Lauria is editor-in-chief of Consortium News and a former 25-year UN correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, Boston Globe, and other newspapers, including the Montreal Gazette, the London Daily Mail, and the Star of Johannesburg. He was an investigative reporter for the Sunday Times of London, a financial reporter for Bloomberg News, and began his professional work as a 19-year-old stringer for the New York Times. He is the author of 2 books, A Political Odyssey with Senator Mike Gravel, Forward by Daniel Ellsberg, and How I Lost by Hillary Clinton, Forward by Julian Assange. So, that's the pretty factual announcement and commentary on the executive order. I suppose the big thing about it is it's wonderful that Trump put out this particular executive order. It prevents or would prevent censorship by the government. But what happens if Trump himself wants to suppress specific information campaigns on Twitter? And what happens if he makes a phone call to Elon Musk and asks him to do that for him? And what if Elon Musk and Trump are on friendly terms at the time? So Elon says, sure, Donald. Okay, and Elon does it. That would be a violation of the executive order, of course. But would it ever come to light? I don't know. There are many other information outlets where Trump has a lot of personal influence. Would he violate his own executive order? I suppose that's what remains to be seen. It remains to be seen whether he goes ahead with the executive order and he tries to implement it. In some ways, it seems opposed to his normal practices of seeking revenge when people speak against him. So the question which arises is, how long will he respect his own order? I think we're certainly going to see. I'm going to check on your comments now. Well, we don't have a whole lot of people here tonight. It's probably because Dee is taking the night off and has not been sharing this. Terry Cook, who hasn't been here for a long time, says, we come from 22 ancestors of species of the universe. We humans are royalty. We possess the highest in creativity to use for a better world. Being a team member in this Academy of Martial Arts Studies opens these young ones to reach to unlimited destinations not previously visited. I'm not going to read the rest of this, Terry, because it's not about what we're talking about here. It's not about the subject of this particular video. Again, these comments are interesting, but they're not about the subjects of this particular video. So I'm not going to go through them. I'm very sorry. I am going to move to our second subject, though, which is 2 AI moves. There is first the AI move of Donald Trump. So I'm going to share that announcement. I won't play the whole thing.
Hello, everybody.
Here is President Trump.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Some very familiar faces. Well, thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here today. We have first full day as president. We're back, and we had a great first term, but we're going to have an even better second term, and I think we're going to do things that people
I have to point out he is using the royal we.
would be shocked at. We're starting off with tremendous investment coming into our country at levels that nobody's really ever seen before. And they're very happy with the fact that I won the race and that they feel confident in their investments. And it's big money and high quality people. So my first day back from having a nice life, it's my honor to welcome 3 of the world's leading technology CEOs. And in the case of Larry Ellison, it's well beyond technology. He's sort of CEO of everything. He's an amazing man, an amazing business person. But to announce a law.
Well, for those who don't know, he is the founder and CEO of Oracle, a huge database company. And his net worth is, if I'm not mistaken, north of $100 billion. So he's definitely one of the oligarchs, very, very successful man, a technologist. But let us go on.
Largest AI infrastructure project by far in history, and it's all taking place right here in America. As you know, there's great competition for AI and other things, and they're coming in at the highest level. We're joined by Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, SoftBank CEO, my friend Masa.
5 words you pronounce wrong. 2 years before.
and CEO of OpenAI, and I would say the by far the leading expert based on everything I read, Sam Altman. So that's great that you're coming in together. That's a massive group of talent and money. Together, these world-leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States, and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
Okay, so Stargate is a joint venture of three companies. Okay, one is Oracle, the other is SoftBank, and a third, okay, is OpenAI, Sam Altman's company. Okay, Trump has announced, or will shortly announce, that he expects 500 billion in investment over 10 years. That's an average of 50 billion per year. Okay, it's a very large amount. According to Trump, this will create 100,000 jobs. I have to comment at this point that 100,000 jobs is not a massive amount when you consider that there are $50 billion here. These are high-level jobs. They're not jobs that pay that simply pay a living wage. They are not jobs that are necessarily something that's going to fulfill the public purpose. These jobs presumably are going to advance the AI field. That may or may not involve something important for the public purpose. It depends on how the AI is used. Trump, of course, is not talking about the uses of AI here. All he's doing is ballyhooing the fact that three private companies are coming together to make a huge investment. There's no question that $50 billion per year is a huge investment, but I have to point out that it could easily be the case that the government forms a company to invest the $50 billion, but does so for the public purpose as outlined and specified by that company. Could be a public corporation, but this is not a public corporation. Okay, it's a private corporation, which will, of course, be very interested in profit making. Okay, and okay, that's not bad, but I have to point out that for $50 billion, it should be possible to create jobs in the millions, not just the 100,000 jobs. Of course, that would take the government to come up with the $50 billion, but that's a very easy thing for the government to do if you happen to be a president that's in control of the Congress. But this president doesn't want to do that. What he wants to do is to get private wealthy people to make investments. Now, that's better than the private wealthy people not making investments, but it's not as good as an equivalent amount of money that would perhaps be deficit spent into the economy by the federal government. Going on.
Immediately. This monumental undertaking is a resounding declaration of confidence in America's potential under a new president. Let me be A new president, I didn't say it, they did. So I appreciate that, fellas. But it'll ensure the future of technology. What we want to do is we want to keep it in this country. China is a competitor and others are competitors. We want it to be in this country, and we're making it available. I'm going to help a lot through emergency declarations because we have an emergency. We have to get this stuff built. So they have to produce a lot of electricity, and we'll make it possible for them to get that production done very easily at their own plants if they want, where they'll build at the plant, the AI plant, they'll build energy generation, and that will be incredible. But it's technical.
So we have to ask, of course, what is the source of the energy that will be generated in these very huge plants? Are we looking at more fossil fuel expenditure? If we are, then there's going to be a pollution cost, an environmental cost. Are these great factories going to be paying the environmental costs? Or is this the usual deal where the private sector socializes the environmental costs?
Technology and artificial intelligence, all made in the USA. Beginning immediately, Stargate will be building the physical.
I have to point out, all the pollution will be made in the USA too.
On virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI. And this will include the construction of colossal data centers, very, very massive structures. I was in the real estate business. These buildings, these are big, beautiful buildings, are going to employ a lot of people. And physical campus.
I was never in the real estate business, but I live in Ashburn, Virginia. And in Ashburn, Virginia is a place which is dotted with these big, extremely large data center buildings. Ashburn, Virginia is not a very densely populated area. But if you're talking about the population of data centers, in that sense, it's very densely populated.
And locations currently being scouted nationwide. They're making their choices of locations. I think they have their choice. I'd like to ask Larry, Sam, and Masa to say a few words and just talk about a little bit about what they're doing. And if you have any questions, and then we'll go into a couple of other subjects also. But this is, to me, a very big thing. $500 billion Stargate project. I think it's going to be something that's very special. It'll lead to something that could be the biggest of all. So
of course, the obvious question is, why did they call it Stargate? Are they going to be building something to teleport us into other galaxies? We all know about the original Stargate and what it did, right?
Well,
this raises your blood sugar. This kills insulin production.
you, and we'll go down the line. Thank you.
And there is Larry.
Thank you, Mr. President. We certainly couldn't do this without you. It would simply be impossible. AI holds incredible promise for all of us, for every American. We've actually been working with OpenAI for a while and with Masa for a while. The data centers are actually under construction. The first of them are under construction in Texas. Each building's 500,000 square feet. There are 10 buildings currently being built, but that will expand to 20, and other locations beyond the Abilene location, which is our first location. The kind of applications that we're building, to give you an idea, maybe the most charismatic and the one that I think touches us all is electronic health records. Not just maintaining electronic health records, but by looking at electronic health records, understanding the condition of the doctors, better understanding the condition of their patients, and being able to provide healthcare plans that are much better than they otherwise would be. A doctor in Indian River Reservation would be able to see how a doctor at Memorial Sloan Kettering would treat the patient, or a doctor at Stanford would treat the patient. We actually provide all of that information, all of that guidance to the doctors who are treating cancer.
Okay, just a comment on this. The idea of using databases to support the diagnostics, okay, that made by doctors and the prescriptions, okay, that are made by doctors has been going on now for a long time. In fact, I've written about it in some articles. In one of the original cases where it was used, specifically the Partners healthcare group in Boston, okay, Massachusetts, okay, set up a database system which doctors could consult. It was an active database system that, when they used it, okay, it presented them with what was in the database about a particular disease and how to treat a particular disease. It also helped doctors with diagnosis. So the point is, the basic concept is already being practiced in various healthcare systems across the United States. It is important. It is quite successful. The application is one in the field of knowledge management. Since I was in that field, okay, for many years, I noticed that, and I was one of the people writing original articles about that, pointing out that in what way it was a knowledge management type of application. Now, these systems did not use AI, artificial intelligence. That doesn't mean the systems couldn't be improved, okay, by AI, but I think it's important to make the point that you can have these kinds of systems without actually having artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, if done well, can certainly enhance that kind of system. But the basic capability of having a doctor on a Sioux reservation have access to records from some major hospital in Texas or Massachusetts or anywhere else in the United States, that basic technology has been there for a very long time and is not new. Larry Ellison is not making it, he isn't making explicit how the application of AI is going to enhance that kind of capability.
Cancer patients or patients with any other kind of disease made possible by AI. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm going to pass it to Masa, but this is a very exciting program for Oracle to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you. That really helped. That's good. That's great. I feel tall now. Thank you. Well, Mr. President, last month I came to celebrate your winning and promised that we will invest $100 billion. And you told me, oh, Masa, go for 200. Yeah. Now I came back with 500. Because this is the, as you said yesterday, this is the beginning of golden age of America. This is one great example, I think, right? We wouldn't have decided to do this.
I think so.
This is the beginning of golden age. We wouldn't have decided unless you won. And yesterday we agreed, we signed.
Did you know that Amazon has a $50 million fund that they have?
Because of this day. So we would make this happen. We would immediately start deploying $100 billion
with a goal of making $500 billion within next 4 years, within your term, right? Because of your success. So we are very, very excited to do this. And our partner is, of course, SoftBank, OpenAI, Oracle, and additionally investing partner with MGX. On top of that, we have the technology partner, NVIDIA, and of course, Microsoft has been very, very supportive to Sam and continue to support all our success. This is not just for business. As Larry said, this will help people's life. This will help solving many, many issues, difficult things that otherwise we could not have solved with the power of AI. I think AGI is coming very, very soon. And then after that, that's not the goal. After that, artificial super intelligence will come to solve the issues that mankind would never ever have thought that we could solve. Well, this is the beginning of our golden age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Fantastic.
Okay, just to give a small comment again, the full name of Masa is Masayoshi Son. Okay, the last name, okay, is spelled by S-O-N. Okay, so Masayoshi's son, or Mr. Son, is who we're talking about here.
I don't have too much to add, but I did want to say I'm thrilled we get to do this in the United States of America. I think this will be the most important project of this era. And as Masa said, for AGI to get built here, to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, to create a new industry centered here, we wouldn't be able to do this without you, Mr. President. And I'm thrilled that we get to. I think it'll be an exciting project. I think we'll be able to do all of the wonderful things that these guys talked about. But the fact that we get to do this in the United States is, I think, wonderful. So thank you very much.
Could you just say one word? I hear so many positive things about what it's going to do for medical research and for solving things, cancer and all the different problems. How will AI help us with the fight against the various problems, diseases, etc.?
These guys can maybe share more about some of the work they're doing there. I think they'll jointly be some of the leaders about driving progress here. But I believe that as this technology progresses, we will see diseases get cured at an unprecedented rate. We will be amazed at how quickly we're curing this cancer and that one and heart disease, and what this will do for the ability to deliver very high quality healthcare, the costs, but really to cure the diseases at a rapid rate, I think will be among the most important things this technology does.
Okay, great. Very good. Thank you.
Of course, he hasn't said anything about how the technology will actually work. He hasn't even told us what kind of AI will be used. There are a lot of algorithms that one can find in the field, okay, of AI. They work in different ways. They do different things. Based on this announcement, we don't really know anything about the AI that will be used. And if we have any previous experience in the field of AI, if we've studied it, if we learned about the types of algorithms in it, okay, and what they do, we would not be in a position, based on this announcement, to evaluate what they're doing, because we don't know what kind of AI they're going to be emphasizing or going to, be involved in, or engaged in. Now, Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, and one distinguishing factor, okay, of OpenAI is that some of the advancements of OpenAI, are open to the public because they've made the source code open to the public. So everybody can see the source code, can evaluate it, and can use parts of it for their purposes. But far from everything that OpenAI does is open source. As we move through this video, we will see that that is important. Going on.
So we're currently working on. Should I step on this? Okay. All right. No, 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 no. I'm not that tall. I'm not that tall. I'm not that tall. I'm not tall. Thank you, Mr. President. One of the most exciting things we're working on, using the tools that Sam and Masa are providing, is a cancer vaccine. It's very interesting. It turns out, I'll be quick, all of our cancers, cancer tumors, little fragments of those tumors float around in your blood. So you can do early cancer detection. If you can do using AI, you can do early cancer detection with a blood test. And using AI to look at the blood test, you can find the cancers that are actually seriously threatening the person. So we can, again, cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that.
Okay, so we already have a situation where the mRNA technology is used, in vaccines. Of course, most famously with respect to the COVID vaccines. And we know that long-term effects of these types of vaccines have not been adequately tested yet. One person who will tell you that they have not been adequately tested yet, he will tell you all day, if you want to listen to him all day, is Mr. Trump's, President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services. Okay, specifically, that is R.F. Kennedy Jr., of course. So, in the situation that Larry is talking about, where they want to create these mRNA vaccines specific to individuals, the issue arises, how are they going to test these vaccines for safety when the vaccines they're trying to make up are specific to individuals? How are they going to know in advance what the side effects are going to be for the specific individuals? I don't know. But I would be very afraid at this point of devising individual-specific vaccines based on the mRNA technology. I mean, it just seems like maybe a bridge too far until we do a lot more scientific work on these vaccines themselves. So I had to bring that up. Going on.
Robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Are they going to do the testing inside the 48 hours? Of course, the devil is in the details here. We can see that. Of course, I think Larry is right to talk about the promise. The promise of AI here is, potentially amazing. But when he just talks about the general idea that he's pursuing, one can immediately see that they're going to have to be very careful in developing, these remedies. It isn't going to be easy because AI is not magic.
Great, thanks. Yeah, just one second. We'll finish up. But these are highly respected guys. I was shocked with Larry because I don't even think Larry does this stuff. You did a very good job for a guy that doesn't do it much, right?
Costco shoppers say this.
Okay, I'm going to end it there. The rest is pretty much ballyhoo. But I wanted to talk about, the announcement and the problems with it. Since Trump never gives a balanced view of anything, he's just interested in using things like that to boost his own status and prestige and his approval ratings. That's what it's about for him. Okay. And I'm not comparing him to any other president, okay, in this respect. I'm not trying to put him down. I'm just trying to tell the truth. So, we now shift over to a second article. I'll be dealing, with AI. We have actually 3 articles on this particular topic. This article is from Eloise Goldsmith at Common Dreams. And she's talking about Watchdog says Trump-backed AI data center push raises massive antitrust concerns, unquote. Going right into the article. U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday highlighted a new private sector initiative to invest as much as $500 billion over 4 years into developing infrastructure to support artificial intelligence, starting with a raft of power-intensive data centers in Texas. Okay, so this also immediately makes me think of where are some of the other centers going to be? It's an old game of politics, of course, to try to direct the investments to areas of the nation that you want to favor, starting with a raft of power-intensive data centers in Texas. Texas, of course, now is the leading Republican state, in the country, as California is the leading Democratic state. Of course, in this joint venture, there is a Silicon Valley company, the OpenAI company participating. I have to say I don't know where SoftBank is headquartered, but it's clear to me that the selection of Texas for this investment was because that was going to be heavily favored by Donald Trump. But anyway, the move drew swift criticism from one watchdog group on antitrust and environmental grounds. The initiative, Stargate, is a joint venture of the tech firms OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. Trump hosted the leader of those companies, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, Oracle Chairman Larry Ellison, and SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son at the White House to announce the initiative just one day after he signed an executive order order rolling back a Biden-era executive order implemented in 2020 through 2023 that sought to put safeguards on AI. So this immediately doesn't become cost less. In other words, there were safeguards on AI. I can't tell you whether those were well taken, or not. But what I can tell you is that statement made by Sam Altman that this effort couldn't have gone anywhere without the president is probably about the repeal of that executive order of Joe Biden, that in order to make this venture go, the repeal of that executive order was necessary, at least to put the deal together so rapidly. Quote, I think this will be the most important project of this era, unquote, said Altman, according to the Washington Post. Quote, we won't be able to do this without you, Mr. President, unquote, he added, though both the Post and the Associated Press noted the creation of the partnership predated Trump's return to the White House. So, Trump has facilitated that only post-formation of the partnership. Biden's 2023 executive order on AI placed safety obligations on AI developers and called on federal agencies to examine the technology's risks. But Biden, too, was interested in boosting AI infrastructure development. Right before he departed in early mid-January, Biden signed an executive order directing federal agencies to identify government sites that could be leased to private companies for the construction of AI data centers. So a public contribution of that sort, to be made to this particular joint venture. So Biden was going to facilitate this too, though I don't think that he would have abrogated the safety obligations on the AI developers. Here, I also have to point out that I've written an ebook by the name of Riskonomics, which talks about how to measure, how to moderate, and overcome the risk of error, in anything that you're doing. Okay, in this case, there's a proposition that is very transparent here, and that proposition is that this particular AI venture is going to be in accord with the public purpose. It's going to be very good for the people. It's going to produce all kinds of improvements. That's a proposition. What is the risk of error in that particular proposition? The risk of error could be assessed with a methodology like the one I propose in my book, but of course I seriously doubt it whether the high-flying CEOs of Oracle and SoftBank, and OpenAI are going to do anything like that kind of risk of error assessment that I outlined in my book. So there we go. Again, the name of the book is Riskonomics. It's available under my name, at Amazon. It is an Amazon Kindle book. Environmental groups and tech advocacy groups have long advocated for greater safeguards on AI, pointing to the technology's potential impact on the climate emergency. The average query in the AI-powered chatbot ChatGPT requires 10 times the amount of energy a Google search needs. And, quote, in that difference lies a coming sea change in how the US, Europe, and the world at large will consume power and how much that will cost, unquote. According to a 2024 analysis published by the investment firm Goldman Sachs, also colloquially known as Golden Sachs, Goldman Sachs analysts believe that AI will represent about 19% of data center power demand by 2028. That's very significant because data center power demand is already very, very high. And of course, it was proudly stated by Trump here that these are going to require, that these centers will have intensive power needs. Where will those needs come from? AI infrastructure is also water intensive. Global AI demand is projected to require more water extraction in a year than the country of Denmark by 2027, according to one study. Quote, the alarming surge in these centers' energy demand is on track to extend the fossil fuel era, which means it's going to extend the possibility of ending the existence of the human species and much else. And it is already increasing costs for some consumers and threatens to bring about a larger affordability crisis while lining the pockets of big tech billionaires. I don't know if Sam Altman is a billionaire yet, but I believe that Masayoshi's son is. And of course, as I said earlier, Larry Ellison is currently, his net worth is somewhere north of $100 billion. Anyway, that quote I just gave you was from Karen Orenstein, a director at the environmental group Friends of the Earth, following Biden's January executive order. Quote, for the sake of our planet and its people, we need to rein in big tech and regulate AI, unquote, she said. And of course, what Trump did was to remove one executive order that called for the regulation of new AI projects. Meanwhile, the joint venture to build out AI infrastructure has also drawn scrutiny from one watchdog group over concerns of corporate concentration. Public Citizen co-president Robert Weissman said Wednesday that, quote, the new Stargate plan, at minimum, raises massive antitrust concerns, even if it turns out to be structured to avoid antitrust law enforcement. It plainly will concentrate power in a small number of corporate hands, unquote. Quote, absent a commitment to bring on new renewable energy to power an even greater spike in AI power demand, the Stargate build-out threatens to worsen the rush to climate catastrophe and to drive up consumer electric bills, unquote, he said. He, of course, is Robert Weissman of Public Citizen. Another observer, Jeffrey Westling of the American Action Forum, remarked on the timing of the announcement, quote, interesting to wait to announce this until the Trump admin, assuming it's all private investment. Maybe they were worried about FTC, DOJ, antitrust scrutiny, unquote. He wrote on X, on Tuesday. So, of course, now it's not going to have FTC, DOJ, antitrust scrutiny because Trump will torpedo that, won't he? So that's the way these things are going to go. But what we're going to do next is we're going to examine, we're going to bring up a piece that questions the very foundation of the joint venture that we just were talking about. So let us go to that piece right now. In fact, I think I'm going to go to some of your comments right now first. Steve Wolfbrand says, hello, everybody. And Steve says, very small nuclear power plants. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe they will use nuclear power. And if it's safe nuclear power, then that won't be a problem. Of course, it would have to be a nuclear power plant that was impossible to sabotage in order to be safe. The Earl of Lurie says, at Steve Wolfbrand, hello. And Steve says, hi, Earl. Steve says, the future looks bright. Well, I gave some reasons why it may not look so bright, but we're going to get into something else that does suggest the future may look bright. But here we go on that one. This is an article by Mike Whitney from the UN's Review. The title is China's Deep Six Bombshell. Oh, excuse me, I'm reminded that it's time to take a couple of pills for me. So if you'll excuse me for just a moment, I will take these and then proceed with Mike Whitney's article. China's Deep Seek Bombshell rocks Trump's 500B AI boondoggle. Well, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a boondoggle at first, but it does rock that particular investment, withholding judgment about whether it's a boondoggle or not. What I have to point out, though, whether it's a boondoggle or not, it may not become a profitable venture because of China's Deep Seek bombshell. And here's I guess that's a Chinese version, okay, of an AI. It's an AI with a Mongolian fold. With AI, we are summoning the demon in all these stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water. It's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon. It doesn't work out, unquote. That's a quote, okay, from Elon Musk. It immediately reminds me of the story, okay, in Judaism, okay, of the golem. The golem was created by Rabbi Lowe, okay, of Prague. I forget when Rabbi Lowe was current. I think the 13th century or the 14th century. But the golem was created by the rabbi, was formed, okay, out of clay. And the secret name of God was written on the forehead, okay, of the golem. And the golem then was brought to life by the rabbi by saying some prayers using the secret name of God. The Jews of Prague had been experiencing persecutions, okay, in those days. I really ought to look up the centuries when this was supposed to have happened. But the rabbi created the golem as a sort of a Frankenstein monster to protect the Jewish community in Prague. Well, according to the story, the golem soon began to get out of control, wreaking devastation on the whole area. And so the rabbi had to deprive it of life and lay the golem to rest, once again, simply making it a harmless lump, okay, of clay. I'm sure Elon Musk knows that story of the golem very well. The future of humanity is being decided as we speak. going on with the article. And it's not being decided on a battlefield in Eastern Europe or the Middle East or the Taiwan Strait, but in the data centers and research facilities where technology experts create, quote, the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of artificial intelligence, unquote. This is a full-blown, scorched earth free-for-all that has already racked up a number of casualties, though you wouldn't know it from reading the headlines, which typically ignore recent, quote, cataclysmic, unquote, developments. But when President Trump announced the launching of a $500 billion AI infrastructure project, Stargate, on Tuesday, just hours after China had released its DeepSeek R1, which quote, outperforms its rivals in advanced coding, math, and general knowledge capabilities, unquote. It became painfully obvious that the battle for the future, quote, is on, unquote, in a big way. And this is not a battle that either side can afford to lose. Here's how technology expert Adam Button summed it up. Quote, imagine we're back in 2017 and the iPhone 10 was just released. It was selling at $999, and Apple was crushing sales and building a wide moat around its ecosystem. Now imagine, just days later, another company introduced a phone and platform that was equal in every way, if not better, and the price was just $30. That's what unfolded in the AI space today. China's DeepSeek released an open source model, open source, that works on a par with OpenAI's latest model, but costs a tiny fraction to operate. Moreover, you can even download it and run it free, or the cost of your electricity, for yourself. The product is a huge leap in terms of scaling and efficiency, and may upend expectations of how much power and compute will be needed to manage the AI revolution. It also comes just hours before Trump is expected to unveil a $100 billion investment. Now we know it's $500 billion investment in U.S. data centers. The model shows there are different ways to train foundational AI models that offer up the same results with much less cost. It also opens up far more applications for AI that would have been too expensive to run previously, which should broaden the applications in the real economy. China's DeepSeek may have just upended the economics of AI. Forex Live. And there are our three entrepreneurs again: Larry Ellison, Masayoshi Son, and Sam Altman. And there, of course, is Donald Trump. U.S. tech leaders invest $500 billion in major AI project. That photo is from the Australian. Imagine the panic that is spreading across Western tech capitals right now. AI was supposed to be the fast track to absolute societal control and oligarchic rule into the next 1,000 years, thousands of years, essentially millennia. But now those pesky Chinese have overturned the apple cart, leaving Western elites with a problem they might not be able to fix. See, unchecked AI will lead us to a police state. Okay, from Edry. I'm not going to go into that article here. I may do it at a future time. but I will click on the link. They expected that their microchip sanctions would sabotage China's AI efforts for at least a decade or so, but instead China has come roaring back with a system that has left the tech giants gasping for air. Of course, China's eye-popping strides in technological development are nothing new, as editor Ron Enns pointed out in a recent article, where he noted that, quote, between 2023 and 2007, the U.S. led in 60 of the 64 technologies, the important technologies for technological development. Whereas as of 2022, quote, China led in 52 of the 64 technologies. That's not a competition. That's a beatdown in a parking lot. Piers Unz. China now leads the world in many of the most important future technologies. The success of its commercial companies in telecommunications, Huawei, Zhangjian, EV, in telecommunications, and he mentions Huawei and Zhangjian, okay, in electric vehicles, BYD, Geely, Great Wall, etc., in batteries, CATL and BYD, in photovoltaics, Tongwei Solar, JA, ACO, etc., are directly built on such R&D prowess. Similarly, the Chinese Chinese military's modernization is built on the massive technological development of the country's scientific community and its industrial base. With its lead in science and technology research, China's position to outcompete the U.S. in both economic and military arenas in the coming years. That quote is from American Pravda, China versus America, which is a recent, very, very long piece from Unz.com, the Unz Review. None of this should come as a surprise, although the timing of DeepSeek's release, preempting Trump's Stargate announcement, shows that the Chinese don't mind throwing a wrench in Washington's global strategy if it serves their regional interests, which it undoubtedly does. Here's a bit more background from an article by Benj Edwards at Ars Technica. On Monday, Chinese AI lab DeepSeek released its new R1 model family under an open MIT license, with its largest version containing 671 billion parameters. The company claims the model performs at levels comparable to OpenAI's O1 simulated reasoning model on several math and coding benchmarks. The releases immediately caught the attention of the AI community because most existing open weights models have lagged behind proprietary models like OpenAI's O1 in so-called reasoning benchmarks. The R1 model works differently from typical large language models. They attempt to simulate a human-like chain of thought as the model works through a solution to the query. This class of what one might call, quote, simulated reasoning, unquote, models, or SR models for short, emerged when OpenAI debuted its O1 model family in September 2025. DeepSeek reports that R1 outperformed OpenAI's O1 on several benchmarks and tests, including the AIME, a mathematical reasoning tests, Math 500, a collection of word problems, and SWE Bench Verified, a programming assessment tool. TechCrunch reports that 3 Chinese labs, DeepSeek, Alibaba, and Moonshot AI's Kimi, have now released models they say match OpenAI's capabilities, with DeepSeek first previewing R1 in November. Cutting edge Chinese, quote, reasoning, unquote, model rivals OpenAI O1, and it's free to download. Okay, this is from Ars Technica. What that quote was. This is a very big deal. The United States intends to dominate the world in this critical technology, and yet the upstart Chinese have not only produced a system that is every bit as good as America's best, but have made it more affordable, more accessible, and more transparent. What's not to like? Here's a tweet from the World Economic Forum, and the tweet says, WEF vows millions of useless, quote unquote, human workers will be replaced with AI by 2030. This is from Slay News. WEF vows millions of useless human workers will be replaced. And so, there you are. Note, OpenAI is an American artificial intelligence AI research laboratory. It is made up of the nonprofit OpenAI Incorporated and its for-profit subsidiary corporation, OpenAI Limited Partnership. OpenAI has emerged to be one of the primary leaders in the generative AI era. OpenAI is a privately held company that has open sourced some of its technology, but it has not open sourced most of its technology. In contrast, DeepSeek AI R1 is open source, which means its code is publicly accessible. Anyone can see, modify, and distribute the code as they see fit. Open source software is developed in a decentralized and collaborative way, relying on peer review and community production. Here's more from political analyst Arnaud Bertrand in a post on X. Quote, most people probably don't realize how bad the news about China's DeepSeek is for OpenAI. They've come up with a model that matches and even exceeds OpenAI's latest model, O1, on various benchmarks, and they're charging just 3% of the price. It's essentially as if someone had released a mobile on par with the iPhone, but was selling it for $30 instead of $1,000. It's this dramatic. What's more, they're releasing it open source, so you even have the option, which OpenAI doesn't offer, of not using their API at all and running the model for free yourself. Oh, the free is in quotes, quote unquote. If you're an OpenAI customer today, you're obviously going to start asking yourself some questions like, quote, wait, why exactly should I be paying 30 times more, unquote? This is pretty transformational stuff. It fundamentally challenges the economics of the market. So basically, it looks like the game has changed. All thanks to a Chinese company that just demonstrated how U.S. tech restrictions can backfire spectacularly by forcing them to build more efficient solutions that they're now sharing with the world at 3% of OpenAI's prices. As the saying goes, sometimes pressure creates diamonds. And that tweet was at Arnaud Bertrand. Get the picture. Everything the U.S. has done to stymie Chinese development, including economic sanctions, chips embargoes, also military provocations, political meddling, even arresting a Huawei executive, truly pathetic, has blown up in their faces. China's well-educated, highly motivated, technologically adept workforce have produced a model of AI that equals or exceeds the best the West has to offer at a fraction of the cost, and with open sourcing that allows users to modify and distribute the code as they see fit. So which version of AI sounds like a genuine benefit to humankind, and which sounds like another scheme for transforming the world into a dystopian police state controlled by aspiring tyrants and psychopathic control freaks? Hello, Elon Musk. Here's more than from Bertrand, unquote, why China's making AI available so cheap. Quote, it speaks to a different philosophy / vision on AI. Ironically named, quote, OpenAI, is basically about trying to establish a monopoly by establishing a moat with massive amounts of GPU and money. DeepSeek is clearly betting on a future where AI becomes a commodity, widely available and affordable to everyone. By pricing so aggressively and releasing their code open source, they're not just competing with OpenAI, but basically declaring that AI should be like electricity or internet connectivity, a basic utility that powers innovation rather than a premium service controlled by a few players. God bless you, honey. And in that world, it's a heck of a lot better to be the first mover to help make it happen than the legacy player who tried to stop it. This is another tweet at Arnaud Bertrand. And then in parenthesis from Mike Whitney, creepy Larry Ellison predicts, quote, civilians will be on their best behavior, unquote, with an AI police state surveillance system. And here's a tweet from Chief Nerd. Oracle's Larry Ellison says, quote, citizens will be on their best behavior, unquote, with an AI surveillance system. Wonderful, wonderful. So it's basically like everything else in this sick, twisted world where a handful of money-grubbing types of miscreants muscle their way into a new technology so they can fatten their own bank accounts while planting their boot heel firmly on the neck of humanity. It seems to me that China's approach is vastly superior in that it's clearly aimed at providing the benefits of AI to the greatest number of people at the lowest possible cost. Here are a few random comments on China's DeepSeek AI that I picked off X that show how excited people are about this groundbreaking version. Quote, the ramifications of this are huge. Every day China does something incredible, totally unlike the stagnation of the EU talking all day while accomplishing nothing, or the latest evil plan oozing out of DC. This is just brilliant and inspiring. It will earn them more goodwill at Captain Krusty 66. It's the China recipe book for success for every industry where Western oligopolies have dominated at B. Booker 450. AI will become a part of everyday infrastructure like electricity and tap water. DeepSeek is a significant step towards that, thanks to its cost reduction and open source nature. This is from at Mr. Big 2024. Here's another tweet. We're living in a timeline where a non-US company is keeping the original mission of OpenAI alive. Truly open frontier research that empowers all. At Dr. Jim Fan. This is cool. This isn't just another open source LLM release. This is O1 level reasoning capabilities that you can run locally, that you can modify, and that you can study. That's a very different world than the one we were in yesterday. This is from Al, comments line. And price comparison of OpenAI 01 and DeepSeek AI R1 R1 is significantly cheaper across all categories, 96 to 98% savings. Now you know why big organizations don't want open source to continue. If humanity is ever going to benefit from AI, it will be from open source. At AI for Success, China is overturning mainstream development theory in astonishing ways. China's GDP per capita is only 12,000. That's 70% less than the average in high-income countries. Yet they have the largest high-speed rail network in the world. They've developed their own commercial aircraft. They are the world leaders in renewable energy technology and electric vehicles. They have advanced in the area of medical technology, smartphone technology, microchip production, aerospace engineering. China has a higher life expectancy than the USA, with 80% less income. We were told that this kind of development required very high levels of GDP per capita, but over the past 10 years, China has demonstrated it can be achieved with much more modest levels of output. How do they do it? By using public finance and industrial policy to steer investment and production towards social objectives and national development needs. This allows them to convert aggregate production into development outcomes much more efficiently than other companies, where productive capacity is often wasted on activities that may be highly profitable to capital or beneficial to the rich, but may not actually advance development. Of course, China still has development gaps that need to be addressed. And we know from some other countries that higher social indicators can be achieved with China's level of GDP per cap by focusing more on social policy. But the achievements are undeniable, and development economists are taking stock. At Jason Hickel. Julian Assange says, quote, artificial intelligence is being used for mass assassinations in Gaza. The majority of targets in Gaza are bombed as a result of artificial intelligence targeting. It has been revealed that Google provided the Israeli military with AI tools in the early weeks of the genocide. Here's a quote from Megatron. New. Julian Assange says artificial intelligence is being used for mass assassinations in Gaza. The majority of targets in Gaza are bombed as a result of artificial intelligence targeting. It has been revealed that Google provided the Israeli military with AI tools. And this is actually from X, and there's a video by Julian Assange attached to it. Unfortunately, the intensity of the competition between the US and China ignores the inherent risks of artificial intelligence and its looming threat to human survival. In a recent analytical piece by the Rand Corporation titled AI and Geopolitics, How Might AI Affect the Rise and Fall of Nations? The authors provide a disturbing window to a future in which, quote, AI-enabled machines of equivalent or greater intelligence and potentially highly disruptive capabilities, unquote, could pose a threat to our own existence. Keep in mind, the line between our historic reality and science fiction has already been crossed, just as the probability that our own creation, AI, is likely, quote, to become an actor, not just a factor, in the existential challenges faced by our species. Here's a short blurb from this truly unsettling article. Although technology has often influenced geopolitics, the prospect of AI means that the technology itself could become a geopolitical actor. AI could have objectives and motives that differ considerably from those of governments and private companies. Humans' inability to comprehend how AI thinks and our limited understanding of the second and third order effects of our commands or requests of AI are also very troubling. Humans have enough trouble interacting with one another, It remains to be seen how we will manage our relationships with one or more AIs. We are entering an era of both enlightenment and chaos. The borderless nature of AI, this is all a long quote, by the way. The borderless nature of AI makes it hard to control or regulate as computing power expands. And remember, fantastic advances in quantum computing are taking place right now. Models are optimized and open source frameworks mature. The ability to create highly impactful AI applications will become increasingly diffuse. In such a world, well-intentioned researchers and engineers will use this power to do wonderful things. Ill-intentioned individuals will use it to do terrible things, and AIs could do both wonderful and terrible things. The net result is neither an unblemished era of enlightenment nor an unmitigated disaster, but a mix of both. Humanity will learn to muddle through and live with this game-changing technology, just as we have with so many other transformative technologies in the past. Continuing on with the quote, the potential dangers posed by AI are many. At the extreme, they include the threat of human extinction, which could come about by an AI-enabled catastrophe, such as a well-designed virus that spreads easily, evades detection, and destroys our civilization. Less desired, but considerably worrisome, is the threat to democratic governance. If AIs gain power over people, AI cannot be contained through regulation, so the best policy will aim to minimize the harm that AI might do. This will probably be most critical in biosecurity, but harm reduction also includes countering cybersecurity threats, strengthening democratic resilience, and developing emergency response options for a wide variety of threats from state and sub and non-state actors. In light of the likely very widespread proliferation of advanced AI capabilities to private and public sector actors and well-resourced individuals, government should work closely with leading private sector entities to develop advanced forecasting tools, war games, and strategic plans for dealing with what experts anticipate will be a wide variety of unexpected AI-enabled catastrophic events. AI and geopolitics, how might AI affect the rise and fall of nations? In other words, humanity should encourage their business and political leaders to exercise sound judgment and prepare for unexpected disasters that could terminate the species. That is simply not sufficient defense for the challenge we face. The old world is dying away and a new world struggles to come forth. Now is the time of monsters, unquote. That quote was from Antonio Gramsci, an Italian political theorist. And that's the last word on this very wonderful article by Mike Whitney, which I think you'll agree is one that pauses and makes one think and makes one want to do a lot more research into this. But also, at a minimum, it seems like the release of DeepSeek technologies, or the release of DeepSeek R1, I should say, has to put a crimp in the plans of the Stargate AI infrastructure project. That particular joint venture, I think on the basis of this article, you could pretty much advise Stargate that they better quickly get on top of the open source coding of DeepSeek R1, perhaps they can use that to develop a superior product of their own. The problem is that that product appears to have nothing like the energy-intensive resources that Stargate is planning to build. And so the question arises, what is the need for the infrastructure project that Stargate is embarking on? Perhaps the $500 billion worth of infrastructure funding should be used to reconstruct our roads, our airports, and other infrastructure projects that are truly needed by the United States. Anyway, I think this article was very interesting, considering its implications for the Stargate project. I will be looking into the open source code myself, just for kicks, and I'm sure it's going to be very fascinating. So, we come to our final topic for tonight, except I'm going to go over your comments first. We don't have any more comments after Stephen Wolfbrandt's "The Future Looks Bright." I'm surprised there are not a raft of comments based on that article about DeepSeek and Stargate. I found it certainly fascinating. Okay, so my final article, it's not a final article, it's a video, and it comes from Judge Knapp's, one of his programs today, his interview of Colonel Wilkerson, Larry Wilkerson. And I'm going to share the screen for that. Play and comment some of the article. Here we go.
Today is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson joins us now. Colonel Wilkerson, my dear friend, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. My objective in speaking with you today is to lead up to the question of whether Donald Trump can tame the State Department, you being an expert on the State Department, but a couple of preliminary questions before we get to that one. President Trump threatened President Putin yesterday, saying things like he's ruining Russia if he doesn't come to the negotiating table and negotiate sincerely with President Zelensky. I'll impose more sanctions. These comments have been met in the Kremlin with laughter. Does the President of the United States know what he's talking about when it comes to Putin and Russia and sanctions?
I listened to those remarks, Judge, and one of the things that struck me was how badly informed, apparently, he is, either by his own intelligence team, and every president has such an instrument, or by the official intelligence team, either outgoing or incoming. He couldn't even get the casualties in the war right. And he certainly didn't have an appreciation, a visceral appreciation of just how badly Ukraine is doing and how successfully Russia is performing at this particular moment.
I mean, he said things like Putin is destroying Russia by the war.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, Russia is in better state economically, culturally, politically, even militarily than it was 2.5 years ago.
Certainly militarily. And I would say that, as for example, in 1865, the world was looking at us with 1 million men who were battle-hardened and well-trained and had proven themselves on the battlefield, and worrying about where we might send those men next. That's what I would be thinking about Vladimir Putin and the Russian army right now, regardless of what else might be impacting him economically or otherwise. He has a thoroughly rejuvenated industrial base, and he has a battle-hardened military.
Professor Gilbert Doctorow points out the absurdity of President Trump threatening to impose more sanctions. Apparently, everything is sanctioned except an annual expenditure of about $320 million. A lot of money to you and me and people listening to us, but nothing to government. For enriched uranium needed by American operators of nuclear power plants. And if the president were to impose a tariff or a sanction on that, some American power plants would have to be shut down.
Is your medication making your neuropathy worse? Then listen to this.
Sorry about the buffering today. We don't always have the buffering, but I mean, most notably the last program, there was almost no buffering at all. I have no idea why we have a lot here today. I've set up in the same way.
Yes.
Does he understand that before he just threatens off the top of his head to enhance sanctions?
I doubt he does. But now that you've mentioned it on public television, he probably will find out. And I would dare say there are other items like that, not so visible and not so explosive, if you will, but there are other items. And there are certainly banks in this country that are still handling in a money laundering way and even in a publicly legal way Russian money, oligarchical money mostly.
Wow. I remember reading in a local New Jersey newspaper $100,000 worth of Stolichnaya vodka has been sitting in a warehouse at Port Newark since Joe Biden imposed these sanctions 2.5 years ago. I wonder if all that vodka's still there.
Let's get up to that warehouse with a truck.
Yeah, that vodka is aging gracefully.
Yeah. Oh, well.
You know, these sanctions that we implement across the face of the globe are doing one very destructive to the empire thing. They are causing people to develop not only end-arounds, get-arounds, which they will inevitably do in the black economy as well as the white economy, the illegal economy, now some $7 to $8 trillion annually, and the actual real legal economy. And these workarounds are producing profits for people who never would have gained profits from them otherwise. And so incentivizing them to do more and their buddies to come along and help. So what we're doing is we're creating a more dramatic power shift towards China than would otherwise be the case.
Wow.
I thought that was a pretty profound analytical comment, okay, from Larry Wilkerson. We're certainly not expecting that our sanctions are speeding the shift over to trade with China, okay, in international relations. That is an unintended consequence of all the sanctions that we're throwing against them.
I hope that he takes wiser counsel before he makes these off the top of his head threats. But here's some counsel that I really hope he does not take. And the same counsel was given by the same person to Joe Biden. And it's just as over the top as it ever was, because this person never seems to learn. I won't even tell you who it is, but you'll know in a heartbeat. Forgive me for adding acid to your stomach after your lunch. Cut number 4, Chris.
This war will never end with Hamas in charge of Gaza,
Right.
politically or militarily. Their days are numbered. And the next question for the world is, what do we do about the Iran nuclear program? That's where we're going to move to next. There's diplomacy. There's a 1 in a trillion chance you'll degrade the Iranian nuclear program through diplomacy. There's a 90% chance you'll degrade it through military action by Israel, supported by the United States. So the next topic I will be engaging in with President Trump is to take this moment in time to decimate the Iran nuclear program, because they're so
What
exposed.
does that mean?
Help Israel
What does that
deliver a
mean?
knockout blow.
What does that mean?
means
You're going to
giving
urge him to
Israel the
have Israel
capabil-
bomb Iran's facilities that are underground and would require U.S. military support to actually be effective?
I'm going to urge the decimation of the Iranian nuclear program. I don't think diplomacy works. This is a religious Nazi regime. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to purify Islam and drive us out of the Mideast. It would be like negotiating with Hitler. I am hoping there will be an effort by Israel to decimate the Iran nuclear program, supported by the United States. And if we don't do that, it will be a historical mistake.
Here we go.
Lindsey Graham's brain, Judge, is as small as Anne Boleyn's breast.
I thought that was a very interesting analogy from Larry Wilkerson. And we'll clarify that analogy, or Larry will, in just a moment. You know, Larry, Kay, and the judge. But before we get into that, I do want to comment on Lindsey Graham and what he said myself. Okay. I found it very ironic that he referred to the Iranian regime as a religious Nazi regime, because first of all, it seems to me that if there was ever a religious Nazi regime, it's the one that currently exists in Israel rather than the one that currently exists, okay, in Iran. I don't see the Iranians running forth and trying to commit a genocide on 2.3 million people. And they have never done that in all the time they have, ruled Iran. which is what, since 1979 now, it's, what is that, 30, it's close to 45 years now. And they have never committed a genocide or tried to commit a genocide on 2.3 million people. The most they did was fight a defensive war with Iraq. And the Iraqis were using chemical warfare against them. And the Iranians won the war. But that's the most warlike thing that they've done in terms of, actually fighting a war. Of course, they started the axis of resistance as well, but that's not been slaughtering large quantities of people. It's been trying to stop the slaughter of large quantities of people up in Gaza. The other point I wanted to make is I seriously doubt whether Israel, whether helped by the United States or not, can destroy all of the nuclear capability of the Iranians. I just don't think that Israel has the capability to do that. And I also think the minute they try, there'll be plenty of advance warning, from Russia. When I say plenty of advance warning, I mean there will be hours, of advance warning. Plenty of time for the Iranians to hit back with missiles, thousands of missiles that will arrive in Israel before the planned attacks from Israel and from the United States actually arrive in Iran. And I think the Iranian attack in that case would be ferocious enough to create complete and utter chaos, inside of Israel, perhaps destroy the Israeli air power or very close to it, and perhaps destroy the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Now, I also believe that such an adventure would probably result in a knocking out of a number of U.S. aircraft carriers as well. So, I think what Lindsey Graham is suggesting is insanity from a capability standpoint. He's so ignorant. We simply lack the capability to do what he wants to do successfully. Now back to Larry Wilkerson, who knows a lot more about these matters than Joe Firestone.
That, of course, is the decapitated former wife of Henry VIII, who notoriously complained about what you have just mentioned.
Yeah. Interesting comment by, I think it was Thomas Cromwell, speaking to Anne's sister. When Anne's sister told Cromwell that on a daily basis almost, Henry pulled down her frock and kissed her breast. And Cromwell looked silent for a moment and then said something like, fancy that. I fancy that he can find them.
Oh, boy. But back to Senator
Graham.
Graham. Does he have President Trump's ear? Does Donald Trump and Marco Rubio take Lindsey Graham seriously?
I don't think Graham has talked to Trump. I don't think Trump will want him to talk to him. I think Trump thinks he's probably an idiot, and I agree with him. And here's two of the reasons I say that. Zarif gave an interview to Fareed Zakaria at the Davos Forum. You listen to that interview, and you know that Donald Trump is already dealing with the Iranians through
Okay, so Zarif is the vice president, okay, of Iran, who was at Davos and was getting interviewed by CNN's Fareed Zakaria. Okay, and so Larry's talking about that particular interview. So, since it's quite certain that Lindsey Graham would not have advised Donald Trump to get in touch with the Iranians, okay, and begin to negotiate, it's also clear that Donald Trump thinks he has the capability to do a deal with the Iranians, and he's attempting to do that already. And it's also true that he was probably in touch with the Iranians before he took over the presidency. And by the way, that contact was certainly a violation of U.S. law. Of course, now that he's president, it doesn't really matter. And on balance, it's also probably a good thing, because what we need to do is to negotiate with the Iranians rather than to bomb them. But here we go.
Emissaries, of course, in good offices, not personally, but he will eventually. You also know that Iran is ripe for a deal. Nothing mesmerizes Donald Trump more than deals, the bigger the better, and deals he can get credit for. This will not be the JCPOA. This will be the DJTD, the Donald Trump deal. And it will be better. Zarif said in the interview that they were willing to go further than they went with the JCPOA. But he also said, got to throw all this stuff out. He also said, we are much closer than we were under the JCPOA to making a nuclear weapon. Although he quickly added, we don't want to do that. The second reason Graham is an idiot, as I've discussed with you a number of times before, is we cannot destroy with military force their nuclear program unless we invade, root out every limb and branch of it, and probably stay around to make sure they don't reinitiate.
You know, the questioner, Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation, interjected a very astute comment, and I don't know that Senator Graham caught it or in the midst of his own rhetoric or even replied to it. She said, do you mean with the assistance of the United States? Because only with the assistance of the United States could you get rid of it root and branch. The same as what you said. The Israelis can't get rid of it root and branch. If the Israelis attack it would require American assistance to do that. Donald Trump really want to start a war with Iran after all this bit about him being the world's peacemaker this week?
No, I think that is one thing Donald Trump does not want to do categorically, start a war with Iran. And it won't matter what Israel wants. It's what Donald Trump wants in this instance, and he does not want a war.
I have to add, I think the same thing can be said not only with respect to Iran, okay, but with respect, okay, to Gaza. There's lots of disagreement among people whether the Gaza ceasefire agreement is a real ceasefire agreement. And people like Colonel McGregor think that the ceasefire agreement may not seem like a real ceasefire agreement at this point because there are so many outs for the Israelis. Okay, but at the same time, the way the ceasefire agreement is operating, the situation can well change in 42 days. That 42 days is a long time when you consider the developing political situation inside of Israel and the sentiment created by the release of all of those hostages and the following through on a deal by the Palestinians themselves may create a new situation in Israel and a lasting intention by Donald Trump to stop the war so he can proceed with the normalization deal that he evidently wants to make with Saudi Arabia. He is well aware that the genocide by the right wing in Israel of the Palestinians is standing in the way of that particular deal. And there's no doubt that not only the public interest of the United States, but also the private interest of the United States, I should say the private interest of himself, not of the United States, but the private interest of himself is certainly in making that kind of deal so he and his family can profit from it. And let's face it, with the new arrangements by the Supreme Court, that make him immune to prosecution. And with the seemingly casual treatment that everybody has been giving the emoluments clause of the Constitution from the very beginning of Trump's time, in the White House, his first term, in the White House, there's no question that he will be able to fix it so that his family and perhaps himself also personally can profit from any deal that is made, in Israel, specifically with respect to the IMEC transportation corridor that he seems so interested in making a reality. So, the same ideas he has, the same preference for making a deal he has with respect to the Iranians, he will have for making a deal with the Israelis to get them to stop their genocide in Gaza in favor of closing the deal for normalization, in the Middle East and creating the IMEC transportation corridor that the Israelis themselves find so promising.
Do you think that the ceasefire is now and transitioning to Hamas and Israel is a genuine ceasefire or an inauguration week pause?
The latter, but it's more complex than that. I think Bibi is in so much trouble. His coalition is in so much trouble. He's now trying to get Ben Gvir behind the scenes. He's working on Ben Gvir to get him to come back and promising him all manner of things, I'm sure, that you're going to see. It's going to be really, really lucky if we get into the second phase. This first phase is not really a ceasefire. It's just like what was happening in Gaza. He's upped the ante on the West Bank, actually. He's going more aggressively there to eliminate people and get settlers new property. And in Gaza, he's got that planned, and that means the IDF can't leave. He's already replacing the leadership to get people in there who are more, I assume, more responsive to his wishes, and the IDF's going to linger. So if the IDF's going to linger, that's a violation of the ceasefire agreement. It'll all depend on how badly Hamas sees that and decides to do what it wants to do. And they are not defeated. They are not defeated. If you look at the ranks of Hamas right now, they are fresh in many respects. They're well trained. They're ready to go again if they have to. They don't want to because they've seen the destruction they brought on the Palestinian people. I saw this stat yesterday from Doctors Against Genocide. Hundreds of children, if not thousands, have no family left. Mom, dad, brothers, sisters are all dead. Other families have been almost completely destroyed. You only have one or two family members left. From a family that had 29 or 30 members before the war started. This is a true tragedy in Gaza. And when we get in there, there are going to be some people of this country who understand finally why CNN and MSNBC and other mainstream media outlets have been lying to them, because the disaster will be manifest to their face.
I just made these 4 Japanese herbs for my swollen prostate.
Sorry about that. Nobody wants to hear about his swollen prostate.
Why do you think Trump ran that clip of Jeff Sachs being so harshly critical of Netanyahu, and then made sure that neither Netanyahu nor his wife were at his his inauguration?
I don't think Trump likes Bibi at all. I think Trump viscerally dislikes Bibi. He can't, he's got that 100 million in his wallet from Miriam, so he can't say it too outrightly. I don't think he likes him at all. That doesn't say he's going to be a better person with regard to the Palestinians and their prospects in the future, but it does say that I think Bibi's days are numbered.
Very interesting.
Yeah, when he says Bibi's days, are numbered, what he's saying, he doesn't think that Trump is going to politically support Bibi inside of Israel, so that we might get a replacement soon who has a better chance of dealing with Trump, who Trump, actually likes. I think Larry might be right about that, but I think that Larry also should be talking more about how much Trump wants to make a deal in Israel to normalize relations with the Saudis, because Trump has also been talking with the Saudis recently, and he's been talking with people in Israel about the possibility of a deal that's going to benefit Israel. Okay, now, of course, the Saudis are insisting that there needs to be 2 states. And lots of people are cynical about whether the Saudis will continue to insist on that. But there are other people who seem convinced that Trump is very serious about that. And there's a lot of his motivation behind that, which in part led to the ceasefire. When I say there are other people who think that, I number Jeffrey Sachs among them, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and Colonel McGregor, who also think that this is a big thing in Trump's calculations, And as we will see on our Saturday program, you'll see how Jeffrey Sachs talks about the renewed prospects for a two-state solution inside the Middle East. Okay, but also Colonel McGregor is totally convinced. And by the way, I should make clear now, Judge Napolitano and Colonel McGregor both were advisors to Trump in his first administration. They know Trump. They don't think he wants to get the United States into a war. Of course, I think we all know he wants to end the war in Ukraine and is interested in talking to the Russians and Chinese about that and vows he will talk to them. And he's making a lot of silly statements about that at this point. And that's not something we're going to talk about in this installment of our program. Perhaps on Saturday, we'll talk more about that aspect of things. But he certainly wants to make a peace, okay, in Ukraine. Colonel McGregor is convinced that he wants peace with Iran, okay, as well. And he's not going to get peace with Iran if the genocide continues to go on. And he probably won't be able to get a peace between the Israelis and Saudis, okay, if the genocide goes on also. So even though Trump doesn't care about the Palestinians and how many of them are killed, or what it's like for the Palestinian children, or what it's like for the Palestinian families, he does care about doing that particular normalization deal, and he does care about making a deal with Iran and not fighting a war in the Middle East, which the Israelis are continuously are trying to push him into. So, to me, this all suggests that the so-called false ceasefire is not really a false ceasefire, okay, at all. It has the potential to become a lasting ceasefire and to develop into negotiations to provide for a Palestinian state of some kind. Now, to be honest, which I always am, of course, okay, I think that probably the Saudis would be satisfied if the Palestinian state that gets created, okay, is a rump state which continues to live in the shadows of the Israeli state in some way, okay, or other, as long as they can have a situation where the new Palestinian state is one that actually exists and is functioning and is part of the UN. I'm sure the Saudis would be quite satisfied with that. And I don't think they would worry too much about the continued self-sufficiency of the Palestinian state. In fact, they would probably rather have a Palestinian state that is not dependent, that is dependent on themselves and the Egyptians for its continued existence. But still, they will want a Palestinian state. And I don't think they're going to do the normalization deal until they get it. I don't think the Iranians will do their deal until they get it. And I think that's just going to be part of the negotiations. And they're going to be real negotiations. And I think the ceasefire is going to turn into a real ceasefire. I may be wrong about all this, of course, but as Steve Wolfman just said in another context, maybe the future looks brighter than we think. So, since there are no more comments on that note, I'm going to end this stream. I will tell you that I'll be back on Saturday with some more. I've already got some things lined up for Saturday's program. And I'm sure that's going to be a very, very interesting program too. So I wish you all a good night, and I will be back on Saturday. Thank you very much for coming.